Hello, I'm Jack Fink, and you're watching Eye on Politics on CBS News Dallas-Fort Worth. As we head into the Thanksgiving holiday weekend, we thought it would be fitting to serve one more helping of politics. State lawmakers are gearing up for their next legislative session starting in January, and there's a renewed effort to legalize mobile sports betting in Texas. And an alliance of sports betting platforms and professional teams have hired a new spokesman with major political ties, former Governor Rick Perry.
Going to help me build my NFT fantasy franchise.
You can't watch sports on TV without seeing multiple ads by the sports betting platform.
But on the game of life.
But while you can bet on a game or match right on your phone in 35 states, Texas is not one of them. Former Governor Rick Perry, who says he once opposed the idea, now says he supports legalizing mobile sports betting in the Lone Star State.
We're going to have people betting on sporting events in the state of Texas. And you know what? I think that's okay. But it needs to be regulated.
Perry says oversight could protect consumers' information from bad operators. He is now the spokesman for the Texas Sports Betting Alliance. It's comprised of a variety of the sports betting platforms and the state's professional sports teams, including the Dallas Cowboys, Dallas Stars, Dallas Mavericks, FC Dallas, and the Texas Rangers. They say once passed and fully developed, Texas could collect up to $550 million for a 2-year budget cycle by taxing the winnings. But opponents like Rob Kohler, a consultant with the Christian Life Commission, says the risks of betting can come at a high cost.
The dots aren't too far to connect that, people can get in a lot of trouble financially.
At least one sports fan who doesn't gamble says he supports the idea.
And less money out of taxpayers' pockets unless they gamble.
Before it can become law, the Texas Constitution needs to be changed, meaning a majority of lawmakers in the House and the Senate need to approve it before sending it to Texas voters to decide. Perry says his message to state lawmakers is simple.
If they're wise enough to place their faith in you with a vote for you, I think we should trust them to make the decision about this issue.
The people speak whenever they send people to Austin, and they're in their communities telling what they think is best for the state.
The Texas Sports Betting Alliance says a bill is still being developed for the upcoming session. Perry says while he is a spokesman for the Sports Betting Alliance, he won't be doing any lobbying. Governor Perry also spoke about the 2024 presidential race, and we'll hear from him on that coming up a little later on. Now to Washington as the current term in Congress winds down. Lawmakers in the Senate and House are hoping to pass bipartisan legislation that would recognize same-sex marriage, but not everyone is for it.
Announce that they are married under the laws of the state of Texas.
We are very happy and beyond overjoyed to be married and to be where we are today.
Mark Farris and Vic Holmes of Plano just celebrated their 7th wedding anniversary yesterday. But now, years later, they say they never expected they'd be hoping Congress passes the Respect for Marriage Act, which would recognize same-sex marriage and repeals the old law that only recognized marriage as being between a man and a woman.
Passing this will allow us all to finally recognize that marriage is equal for everyone.
Democrats and some Republicans in Congress want to pass the measure because when the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, Justice Clarence Thomas said in his opinion, the court should also reconsider its ruling granting same-sex couples a nationwide right to marry.
It's so hurtful. Yay.
We were with Holmes and Farris when the court granted that right more than 7 years ago.
I remember just the wave of emotion that hit when we suddenly realized, hey, we're just like everyone else.
Republican Congressman Pat Fallon opposes the bill.
It's the state of Texas that should decide, in the other states, what the definition of marriage is.
Democratic Congressman Mark VEASEY supports it.
And this is something that the American public, I think, regardless of party affiliation, also is in strong support of.
The bill is expected to pass the Senate and the House and be signed by President Biden. And while Holmes and Farris say they are pleased by that, they don't expect this will end the legal challenges to same-sex marriage.
And sometimes you take a couple steps forward, but maybe you fall back a couple steps. and we're determined not to lose ground.
Without a fight, we're going to have to really work hard to protect this for everybody else coming forward.
Republicans have regained the majority for the new session of Congress starting in early January. We spoke with Congressman Pat Fallon of the 4th District here in Texas about his priorities now that his party will be running the House.
Oh, Jack, obviously very pleased that we'll be in the majority. It was an interesting 2 years being in the minority. And the things that, that I saw really from a 35,000-foot view overview was the fact that Nancy Pelosi really didn't, well, in fact, all the Democrats, I don't know what was going on over the Senate, but in the House and the White House, they didn't want to talk, negotiate, chat, anything. I understand that they had the majority, but there was absolutely no input sought whatsoever. And I don't think that's good government. I hope the Republicans, it's divided government now, so everybody's going to have a seat at the table. But even if we ever control the 3 levers of government again, I don't think that's the proper way to do, govern for the American people.
So what are your priorities in this new term in the majority?
My personal ones do overlap with what the leadership has been talking about. I think we need to secure the border. Again, that's going to be difficult. All of our goals are going to be difficult, quite frankly, Jack, because we have divided government. But at least, again, now we have a seat at the table. First thing I'd like to see is securing the border. The wait in Mexico protocols, the migrant protection protocols worked. That is, when if you claim asylum, you wait in Mexico while your case is adjudicated. Inflation is a huge issue for everyone. I mean, if you just look at Thanksgiving, and the cost of a turkey is up 21%, stuffing is up 69%, rolls 20%. So inflation is a tax on all Americans for everything we buy. Number one, no more gigantic spending bills outside the regular budgetary process. And then also, I think personally, we need to cut spending dramatically. A balanced budget amendment would be nice, but that might be chasing windmills. But I think we need to start that conversation again. We need to have restrictions put in place, like in Texas, we had in the legislature, we had sunset, would mean if a government program was implemented, it didn't just go on in perpetuity. There was a set period of time, and then it would be looked at to see if it was effective or not. I think those are important things to institute moving forward, because Americans inflation at 8% is something that's just really hurting the folks that are working for a living.
Well, on inflation, what is the remedy?
Well, as I said, the first and foremost, stop spending trillions of dollars that we do not need. And that stops because all spending bills originate in the House, and there won't be any more of those, and we won't be approving those moving forward. And again, putting remedies on government spending, because that's the #1 driver of inflation.
And then I wanted to ask you just your comments on the border. Do you think that because there is divided government now, that there will be some opportunity, and not only opportunity, but something gets done as far as, securing the border and immigration reform?
You would hope so. You look back in history after Bill Clinton, got his clock cleaned in the Democrats in 1994. Newt Gingrich, the speaker at the time, and President Clinton were able to work together and did some monumental things. So it's going to really depend on Joe Biden. It didn't give me a lot of hope when he said that he's not going to change a thing, because what he's been doing for the last 2 years didn't work. And he historically, for the last 4 or 5 presidents, had historically low approval ratings. There wasn't a gigantic red wave for a myriad of factors, I think one of which was the Roe v. Wade decision. But it wasn't it wasn't a stamp of approval by the American people on what's been happening over the last 2 years. It was more complicated and nuanced.
Isn't the problem, though, that President Biden didn't get his clock cleaned in the Senate?
Yeah, no, I think that maybe emboldened him, quite frankly. And the Senate is still remarkably close, and it was a bad map. That's a lot of things. A lot of people aren't talking about the fact that it was a very favorable map for the Democrats, because the Republicans were defending in a lot of tough seats, and they successfully defended all of those seats, save Pennsylvania, and that was with a retiring member. I think if Senator Toomey was running again, he would have been reelected. So
It was, it's kind of, maybe it was like a political draw in that sense, but we did take over the House. And one other thing to note that no one's talking about is the Republicans in the congressional candidates across the country, Republican candidates got 3.5 million more votes than Democrats. So people definitely wanted some change.
But there were a lot of predictions of a red tsunami, a red wave that didn't materialize either.
Yeah, you know what? And I'm guilty as charged there. I definitely thought and saw that happening. So there's a couple of things that we can break down really quickly. There was a red wave. It was limited to certain areas. Florida, for instance, there were 6 contested congressional races. The Republicans won them all. And then you saw Governor DeSantis win by 20 percentage points. New York State, very blue state, they're going to have 11 members of Congress from the Republican Party from New York. That is remarkable. Nobody saw that coming as well. So you saw it was more a bit again of a red trickle than a red wave. But in Texas, things, Mayra Flores lost, but she was in a district that Joe Biden would have carried by 18 percentage points, and she lost by 8. So Vicente Gonzalez is very lucky that was drawn the way it was, because if even if it was a Democrat plus 10 district, Mayra would have beaten him.
Let me ask you about sticking on the border for a second.
Sure.
Do you anticipate the House reimbursing the state of Texas? As you know, the state has spent $4 billion trying to secure the border. Do you anticipate that happening?
Well, I filed legislation to do just that. And I hope, the Lone Star Act, I hope that the Republicans in Congress will pass that bill. Now, what its fate will be in the Senate, it's maybe a snowball, and maybe that snowball's in Hades. But we'd like to see it get out of the House and see what happens thereafter, because it's not going to pass into law if it doesn't come out of the House first.
And I did want to ask you about this term. Before this term is up, the Respect for Marriage Act is going to come back to the House. Where are you on this issue? As you know, Democrats and supporters of this say this is necessary because when the Supreme Court issued its Dobbs ruling overturning Roe v. Wade, Justice Clarence Thomas said that they should look at other laws that were basically approved by the Supreme Court, same-sex marriage being one of them, rights, I should say. And so I'm wondering where you are on this issue.
Well, 3 things. First, that bill, when it was in the House, it did not go through the normal process. There were no hearings on that bill. There were no markups on that bill, and there was no debate on that bill. And that's very unfortunate. And as far as Clarence Thomas said, he didn't say anything about marriage or gay marriage at all. And I don't think that that's something that's going to be addressed by the Supreme Court moving forward. None of the 9 justices have said they're interested at all in that. And you're going to need 5 to take it up. But having said all that, I truly believe marriage and an issue like that, there's the 10th Amendment, which means that if it's not explicitly mentioned in the Constitution, it is up to the states. There are 50 laboratories of democracy, and that is the best way to do it. And so I voted no, and I'm going to vote no again, because it's the state of Texas that should decide, and the other states, what the definition of marriage is.
As you know, in the last week, former President Donald Trump threw his hat in the ring. And so there are some people who've already come out. Some members of Congress from Texas have already come out and endorsed him. Others are waiting and seeing. Which camp are you in?
Yeah, well, I would, surprised that the president came out so quickly and did that. Listen, let's be very, very honest here. There's 2 superstar potential candidates. Well, President Trump has announced he's running. And then, of course, you have Governor Ron DeSantis from Florida. And those are the folks, I like contested primaries, quite frankly, Jack, because that's like a sword going through fire. The sword comes out stronger, at the end of the process. And much like if you had a captain that was always, sailing in smooth seas, they're not that great of a captain. So I think it'd be fascinating if Governor DeSantis does jump in. If not, clearly President Trump's cleared the field. I don't see anybody else having any kind of serious shot at our nominee. And then, what I'm really concerned about, and I think a lot of people are,
is we need to make sure we have the strongest nominee possible that can win come November of 2024.
I know there's a lot of discussion on the Democratic side about whether President Biden should run again. What do you think?
Oh, I definitely think President Biden should run again.
Why is that?
Because I think he's going to get beaten. All the things just in the last 2 years, I debated my Democratic opponent in a very safe Republican seat. We had a old-fashioned style debate, and I did that because I really was curious as to how the Democrats could defend a lot of what I've seen over the last 2 years. And there wasn't. It was just attack, attack, attack. There wasn't a lot of defense. I mean, the border would be one issue, inflation and all this spending would be another. The debt, listen, and there's some Republicans who don't have good records on the debt, but Joe Biden has taken it to another level. And these kind of commonsensical things and fixes, the hypocrisy on COVID, when you said, there were all these restrictions domestically, or they're throwing people out of the military and government if they wouldn't take a shot. And yet you were allowing millions of people into the country that you didn't know who they were, that weren't tested for COVID. And then you were spreading them all over the country. That was incredible hypocrisy. So it'd be fascinating for me to see how Joe Biden can defend this, because any other Democrat is just going to say, hey, that was on his watch, not mine.
Congressman Pat Fallon of the 4th Congressional District in Texas, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. We wish you a very happy Thanksgiving.
Thanks, Jack. Appreciate it.
We also spoke with Democratic Congressman Mark VEASEY of the 33rd Congressional District about Democrats losing their majority.
Disappointed to lose the majority. I'm not going to, lie to you about it. Very disappointed to lose the majority. When you are in the minority, and I think it's really important for the public to understand that when you're in the minority, you're basically reacting to what the majority is doing. So when people talk about getting bills passed and filing different pieces of legislation and what's been accomplished, when your biggest accomplishment when you're in the minority is when the other side doesn't get anything done, which honestly, Jack, I think that is probably going to be what we're mainly going to see from the Republican Party with their very slim majority that they have. There's a lot of talk about who's going to be the speaker and whether or not Kevin McCarthy has the votes. My guess is that they'll probably embarrass Kevin McCarthy and we'll have a couple of rounds of votes, and then he'll probably be voted Speaker of the House. He'll probably get the 218 votes that he needs after they've thoroughly embarrassed him to send the message. And these radical, reckless Republicans, most of them are associated with the Freedom Caucus. They're going to hold everything hostage. You even heard one Freedom Caucus member from Arizona saying that he wanted to shut the government down. And so for everybody in North Texas out there, that whether you work at Earl Cabell, Fritz G. Langham, FAA, or the engraving bureau out there on Blue Mound Road, post office, you have a nut in Arizona that's already saying he wants to shut the government down. And that's what North Texans should expect from, again, this radical, reckless Republican leadership and these Freedom Caucus members that just want to basically entertain and try to tear the government down.
How concerned are you about the investigations into Hunter Biden that the Republicans have said that they would like to do?
I don't think that that's what the American public wants. I think the Republicans would be stupid, Jack. I'll be 100% with you. I think that the Republicans would be dumb to do that. But when you have people like Jim Jordan and Marjorie Taylor Greene calling the shots, then yeah, we may expect to see these hearings over Hunter Biden. I don't think that any of us would want all of our personal information out there like that. When you think about, Hunter Biden's laptop being gone through by this guy that he dropped it off to get the laptop fixed. Well, have all your searches, all your emails, all your notes, all your pictures, all your personal information. and have it out there like that. But nevertheless, I think that Republican members of the House, particularly again the far right, radical, reckless Republicans, they're just going to want to do things like this all day. I just really, Jack, I honestly, I pray for our country to be 100 with you. I pray for our country and hope that we can keep the government open, that we can fund our men and women serving in the military, both here and abroad, that we can raise the debt ceiling. We need to raise the debt ceiling, and that we can get FAA reauthorization passed. That's huge for DFW, Love Field, and economically for our region. That's very important that we get that passed. I just hope that we can get some basics done, because this is basically the no leadership, the lack of spine, radical, reckless Republicans that are in charge of the House. They've been put in charge, and it's very unfortunate because we have a lot of things that we need to accomplish for the American public. But this cast of characters, they're not going to let us get anything done.
Well, what do you say to Republicans who say they need to hold the Biden administration accountable?
I would say that they need to hold their own conference accountable, that they need to sit Matt Gaetz down. They need to sit Marjorie Taylor Greene down. They need to sit Boebert down. They need to sit Jim Jordan down. They need to sit Schweikert down and tell them, hey, guys, cut the nonsense out. You're not here to be entertainers. You're here to be members of Congress to get things done. Obviously, they're not going to agree with everything that the president wants to do, but that doesn't mean that we can't sit down and try to find some middle ground. I think that's what the American public wants. I think that was the message that was actually sent back on November the 8th, just a couple of weeks ago, was that they want us to sit down, work things out, and come up with some solutions that are good for the American public, not to sit there and play conspiracy theory games and make fun of Ukrainian soldiers like Marjorie Taylor Greene was doing. I just don't think that that is the message that the American public was sending.
Let me ask you about border security. First of all, do you think now that there is divided government, that there is room for Republicans and Democrats to come together on fixing the border?
I absolutely think that there should be room for Democrats and Republicans to come together on fixing the border. I've been a very strong proponent of making sure that we enhance our border security by spending our dollars smartly. There is so much digital and computerized equipment out there now, things that scan for trucks at the borders. We've seen these horrific images now the last few years of people that have been lost their lives, being locked up in trucks and things like that, 18-wheelers. We have the equipment is there, the surveillance equipment that you can deploy along the border is there. We don't need to stupidly pay for an expensive wall that's not even going to work and not even feasible to connect from one end of the border to the other. There are things that we can do to secure the border that make a lot of sense, and that would be a good use of the taxpayers' dollars, and the Republicans just haven't wanted to work with us on that. I would hope that they would sit down with us, and then I hope that Republicans will again sit down with some of these immigrant families, some of these business leaders, and finally say, hey, let's work together on passing some kind of a comprehensive immigration reform bill. If you really want to secure the border, you'll pass a comprehensive bill that fixes our broken system, that basically encourages people to come over the way that we've been seeing lately. We need a comprehensive bill to be passed, and that's really the other part of this component, and getting good border security. And the Republicans just haven't wanted to do that. But hey, if they want to sit down and talk about that, I'm happy to. But it's, again, you know, with the cray-crays that they have calling the shots over there now, these radical, reckless Republicans, it's hard to imagine that they're even going to want to touch border security, Jack. Like I said, if we can just do the basics and just keep the lights on the next couple of years, then then I'm gonna get on my knees and thank God, to be quite honest with you, because again, these are the cray-crays of the cray-crays that are calling the shots now.
Let me ask you about the Respect for Marriage Act. It's going to come back to the House from when you voted on it earlier in the year. Where are you on this issue?
Absolutely. You know, it's already passed the House, and we need to get it signed into law. It's long overdue, and so yeah, absolutely. Especially in light of what just happened in Colorado, and the attacks that continue to be launched at the LGBTQ community, including from people in positions of power. Let's get this passed. What happened the other day was terrible, and this is something that the American public, I think, regardless of party affiliation, also is in strong support of.
And what do you say to, I know Senator Cornyn opposes the bill, saying the Supreme Court already upheld same-sex marriage. So what do you say to that on the importance of passing this bill?
I would say that I think that Senator Cornyn is on the wrong side of most Texans. Most straight Republicans that I know, including some pretty conservative Republicans that I know that live here in North Texas, are in support of this bill, and they have absolutely no sort of animosity or angst against the LGBTQ community. We need to get this passed. I think that Senator Cornyn is completely reading the tea leaves wrong, if that's what he's trying to do. And knowing him well, and knowing that he has a sense of history, I think that he wants to be on the right side of history and getting this passed.
And I did want to ask you about the fact that with Congresswoman Eddie Bernice Johnson's pending retirement, you are going to be the most senior Democrat as far as Congress is concerned in our North Texas region. And so I'm wondering if that distinction, what that distinction means to you as far as working with Republicans in North Texas to get stuff done for our area.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. In addition to me being the senior Democrat now, which is incredible, I'll also be the highest ranking member, Republican or Democrat, that represents Dallas County now. So that's also very significant. And look, I'm looking forward to, again, continuing to try to work together. I have a great relationship with Kay Granger, work well with Beth Van Dyne, other members of the North Texas delegation. I think that if we can work together and just sort of clear some of the garbage, out of the way that's going to be coming from the Jim Jordans, from the Gates, and some of the more radical, reckless Republicans that we see in Washington, D.C., that all of us can work together for the good of North Texas. There are going to be some things, obviously, as Democrats and Republicans, that we disagree on. But when it comes to, again, things like FAA reauthorization, everyone knows here how huge transportation is to our local North Texas economy. I think that I can sit down and work with most of the members, including the Republicans, in the North Texas delegation. So yeah, very proud of that distinction, and look forward to rolling my sleeves up and getting together. Jack, we get a lot of things solved while we're on the plane and waiting in the airport terminal there, both at Reagan and at DFW, where oftentimes we sit down and talk about issues that North Texans are facing.
My last question to you is just about presidential politics, 2024. I know we just got done with 2022. Let me ask you about President Biden. Should he run again?
I think that the president should absolutely run again if he wants to. He's done a great job. There was no huge red wave referendum against him like everyone was saying there was going to be. I think that he has an amazing vision for America. And as Texas is starting to get better for Democrats, I think that maybe Texas could be in play for President Biden in 2024. And so, if I were him, I would definitely run. And who knows, he may take Texas, I was very encouraged by the 2022 election results. I know a lot of Democrats were upset that we didn't get a new governor. Like I was very disappointed that we didn't get a new governor, but looking and delving into some of the numbers and looking at them closely, I think that we have a pretty good future here in Texas as Democrats.
Congressman Mark VEASY, Democrat of the 33rd Congressional District, Fort Worth. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. We want to wish you a happy Thanksgiving as well.
Happy Thanksgiving. Thank you, Jack.
Thank you. We heard from former Governor Rick Perry earlier about the new effort to legalize mobile sports betting in Texas, but we also spoke with him about former President Donald Trump running again for president in 2024 and the results of the 2022 election. Former President Donald Trump entered the 2024 presidential race, and I'm wondering what your thoughts are about that, because, you know, I was at a watch party the other night where people, you know, really still back the former president right automatically, right away, while others who supported him in 2016 and 2020 say, hold on, let's see who else is going to join the field.
Well, and I would never, again, you know, this people are going to go through this process of deciding who they want to support for the presidency of the United States. It's still a good 18 months to 2 years before this is going to get to be really hot and heavy, I would suggest. But every election cycle, and I ran statewide in Texas 6 times. I had a record. I wanted people to go look at that record and judge me on what I had done, but I also wanted them to look and see, what am I going to do? And that's why we have campaigns. We go forward, we lay out our agenda, we lay out our vision for the state of Texas. We don't just ask people to be blindly loyal to us without sitting down, thinking about where are we going to take this country. It's why we have contests. It's why we have football games. We compete. And I think that is a wise thing. I think it's a thoughtful thing. And so, you know, we're going to go through this process. You know, former President Trump has announced his intention to run again. There are other people who are being talked about as potential presidential candidates as well. And it's a good, healthy process. So I hope we will respectfully and civilly go through this process of selecting who our nominees are, and the country will be better, and democracy will again show that it can be sloppy and it can be kind of rough and tumble at times, but it works. And just like asking the citizens, do you think mobile sports betting is the right thing for the state? Having an election about who needs to lead this country is a good, thoughtful process as well. Let the citizens speak.
What did you make of Texas Republicans sweeping statewide offices yet again?
I think your policies are what people vote on. One of the things that I've been intrigued with watching through the years is the Hispanic voter become comfortable voting as a Republican, kind of like I did when I was a Democrat. Jack, you'll remember I was elected 3 times to the state house as a Democrat, and then Ronald Reagan and Ronald Reagan's policies made it okay for me to become a Republican. I think the same thing is happening in the Hispanic population in the state of Texas as we made our public schools more accountable. We didn't overtax, we didn't overregulate, we didn't over-litigate. And those 4 things, the Hispanic population, which is the fastest growing population and the biggest driver of small businesses in the state, they look at those 4 policies and they go, you know what? The Republican policies of not taking more of my money, not over-regulating me, not over-litigating me, and having my children have a better opportunity for success because the public schools are more accountable. I'm going to become a Republican. I'm comfortable with what they're doing. So that, I think, is one of the reasons that you saw a 10-point difference from the governorship all the way down to the courts, the statewide courts. There was about a 10-point difference, 55-45 thereabouts. And I think the reason that's happening is because the Hispanic population in the state and some in the African-American community as well are coming over to the Republican side. And that's obviously not the only reasons, but policies matter. And as people look in the state of Texas, I'll speak to that. I think our policies are as good or better than any other state in the nation. You saw the same thing in Florida. And I think, again, this is Florida's governor, Florida's legislature, recognizing if you let people have more freedom, keep more of their money, don't over-regulate, don't over-litigate, have good public schools, that the people they'll reward you for that, and they'll reelect you. And that's what's happened in Texas.
And then I did want to ask you about Republicans regaining the majority, albeit a lot fewer votes than a lot of people predicted. What do you make of the fact that Republicans squeaked by in the House, didn't regain a majority in the Senate?
Well, I don't consider it to be a bad day. It wasn't as good as a lot of people had projected it to be. But the fact is, Nancy Pelosi is not going to be the speaker. Kevin McCarthy is, and that's a good thing. Whether you'd rather win the ball game 47-0, but it's still a W. I'm pretty sure the University of Texas, when they beat Oklahoma this last year, they were really excited that they won in a big way, but it's still a W. And that's what's important for the Republican Party in the House. It's still a W. We don't know yet in the Senate. The Senate may be the same place it was the last 2 years with a 50-50 Senate, depending on what happens in Georgia. And again, at that particular point in time, there's really been no change in the Senate. Joe Manchin, who from time to time can be a good conservative voice, he's going to play an important role, make sure that they don't get any real crazy leftist on the Supreme Court if there's an opening, for instance. So the Georgia runoff is really important from my perspective. But I think overall, it was a good night for the Republican Party. And when you can take over the House, even if it's by 5 or 6, that's basically where the Democrats were. And they seem to be able to get some things done that they wanted to get done. Kevin McCarthy, good, solid conservative. I'm very excited about what he's going to do over there. And then when you look at the 24 cycle, Jack, I think you see the map. That's really good for the Republican Party at that particular point in time. My projection is that people are going to be ready for some conservative, thoughtful, pro-business, pro-family, pro-faith leadership in America. And a Republican is going to be the president, and we're going to have both houses of the congressional bodies, the Senate and the House, in January 2025.
Former Texas Governor and former U.S. Energy Secretary Rick Perry, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Jack, always good to see you, my friend.
That's all for Eye on Politics this week. Thank you for joining us. I'm Jack Fink. We wish you and your family a very happy Thanksgiving. You're watching CBS News, Dallas-Fort Worth.